Hello, if you're new to this series, I'm on a quest to find unique game mechanics because I often talk about how important it is to have a unique mechanic or original combination of mechanics in order for an indie game to stand out. Each episode I play 4 games, suggested by viewers and devs, or selected randomly on itch.io. I'll review the games and rate them based on 3 categories: how original the unique mechanic is, how well the unique mechanic is integrated into and supported by the game, and the game's quality overall, because if your game just sucks, it doesn't really matter how cool your mechanics are. Nice and simple, so let's get started. The first game this episode is Pink Elevator and was sent to me by the developer. In Pink Elevator, you play as a wheelchair warrior, equipped with a gun and the ability to front flip. The goal is to progress as fast as you can, while only being able to use an elevator at the end of a level if you've shot all the targets in the level. There's a timer that doesn't reset between levels and marks the end if you haven't reached the end of the game. The most unique mechanic would be this persistent timer, encouraging you to play as fast as you can, as the game is a self-professed speedrunning game. The concept of a timer is not unique, but having it not reset between levels is a bit more uncommon, so it gets a 3 in originality. The timer definitely encouraged speed in a speedrunning game, and being forced to replay everything each time made me feel like I was being trained to speedrun, and there was a bit of satisfaction each time I was able to get a little further than the last. However, all the rest of the mechanics were simple platforming mechanics that one would expect to have in almost any base platforming game. In other words, there wasn't anything in particular that supported the main unique mechanic, so on implementation I give it a 2. Pink Elevator felt like a base upon which an interesting game could be built. The persistent timer is a great start, but the lack of polish makes the game feel dull and tedious. If the game had a wider range of movement options, as well as levels with more open layout, where there is no single defined path, this would encourage the player to explore different routes and strategies in order to minimize the time they spend in each level. And providing an end screen after each one showing results would build a desire to set a new record and try again. The game as it stands though, I can only give an overall score of 3 here as well. Next up is Filled with Freedom, a first-person mini-horror where you play as someone who just inherited a new car and house and get tangled up in an otherworldly experience. Best I could tell, there was no unique mechanic. You could move and interact with things by clicking with your mouse, so without any unique mechanic to speak of, I give the game an originality score of 0. And due to the lack of a unique mechanic, it cannot be implemented and so therefore gets a 0 as well. The game was extremely linear, with only one moment feeling like I made a choice, and with walls keeping you on track and prompts telling you what to do, there was a lack of freedom, this being counterintuitive to the title, Filled with Freedom. The movement in the game felt unnaturally slow, especially when sprinting. I understand slow movement might be good for a horror game, but only when the character is hiding, which doesn't happen at all in this game, so the unnaturally slow movement only broke immersion. The solution would be to speed up the movement of the character, then to keep the pressure of feeling like you're being chased, make the monster move faster too. This can be a lot more stressful because then your path decisions will feel more impactful. If you've ever played Dying Light, you'll know what I'm talking about. When you're being chased by parkour zombies that can ninja through the city just as fast as you, there can be a lot of pressure to not make any mistakes. Otherwise, Filled with Freedom had only a few cheap jump scares, but had an interesting otherworldly feel, kind of like the Backrooms, so I give it an overall score of 4. A Blob And His Box is a precision platformer where you play as a blob that can interact with a box by issuing a small shockwave, moving the box around in order to get yourself from point A to point B. The ability to interact with a block in a platformer to progress is not unique. In fact, I would say it's an incredibly common. The more unique component to this game was the ability to double jump infinitely, and if you hit your head, you get knocked out for a second or two. But these mechanics are intended to be supplemental to the ability to move the box around, so I will focus on the box moving mechanic, resulting in an originality score of 2. While being knocked out was an interesting way to have the main mechanic supported by a side mechanic, it felt more like a frustrating side effect rather than a satisfying feature. The shockwave ability itself was so limited in range, the blob could just as well be kicking the box as seen in any other platformer with boxes. All other mechanics seemed like standard platforming mechanics and had little to do with the player's ability to move a box, so the game gets an implementation score of 3. A Blob In His Box had extraordinarily uninteresting mechanics and level design. The lack of sound and music left the visual polish hanging. The gameplay was frustrating in a I want to stop playing sort of way instead of the I want to get better at this sort of way that a precision platformer should aim to have. This was mostly due to the inability to move the block with any sense of control or accuracy, and without any indications of the game getting better, I quit playing after only a few levels, so an overall score of 2 is deserved. Last but not least is Nightclub Showdown. This game you play as a clearly John Wick inspired character in a turn-based shooting game with the goal of eliminating all the bad guys in a nightclub. The unique aspect of the game is the combination of turn-based and shooting gameplay. While neither of these are unique in themselves, the combination is, resulting in an originality score of 6 out of 10. The options provided the player each turn are vast, and each choice has an organic risk versus reward. Shooting for 1 damage takes 1 turn, and going for a headshot dealing 2 damage takes 2 turns. Alternatively, you can hide behind obstructions, hold bad guys as shields, or simply walk to a new location, as well as reload, which also takes a turn. The most compelling thing is the amount of turns you have depends on what you chose to do, as each time you hit an enemy, their animations are reset, potentially providing you more time to take action. On top of this, the game doesn't stop if you don't take a turn. Time moves on ever so slowly, pushing the player to make choices. Adding so many choices in a fast-paced way highlights the combination of turn-based and shooter excellently, and gets an implementation score of 9. Nightclub Showdown has excellent animations, game feel, and design. The gameplay is incredibly satisfying and delivers a mini experience as if you are John Wick himself, so a score of 9 out of 10 is well deserved. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you think my assessments were fair, or if you have any recommendations for games I should review in the next episode. See you next time, and have a beautiful day.